There was no Drew McIntyre distraction or interference like I thought there would be. Gunther just beat him clean. Again. And I suppose if I can sit here and still want to see Sheamus win the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania, despite all of the clean losses that he has taken when challenging for that title, then you could say the same for Jey Uso because he is still so over right now. So are we looking at a scenario where Jey Uso challenges Gunther one more time for the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania and finally wins it? Are we looking at a surprise Jey Uso win in the Royal Rumble? One cannot discount the possibility. I know everybody is talking about Cena and Punk and Roman and maybe even The Rock. I don't hear anybody mentioning Jey Uso's name, and I think it's time people started including him in that discussion for next weekend.
Last night was the Royal Rumble. Despite the length, I thought it was a strong show with two enjoyable Rumbles, more so the men's match than the women's match. But I didn't think either of them were bad, with maybe the greatest upset in the history of Royal Rumble matches, especially when you consider the star power they had in this one. Look at all the big names they had in there, who they ended up going with. But I told you people, and you heard it right there from last week's podcast. You heard it at the top of the show. When I talked about Jey Uso coming out of Saturday night's main event and that loss to Gunther, even before he went out there on Monday night and cut that promo and said, I know I can beat him. I know I can beat Gunther, right? And you had to know that this was not over yet, that this was going somewhere. This was leading to something. But I said it last week. I said, people need to stop sleeping on Jey Uso as a possible winner in the Royal Rumble. And I said, are we looking at Jey Uso as a surprise winner in this 2025 edition? Because there is a story here, very obvious, clear story, that he is going to be the one to dethrone Gunther at some point and prove all the doubters and prove all the naysayers wrong. That, even though he goes around calling himself main event Jey Uso, there's a lot of people that don't look at him as a true main eventer. See, I thought the upset was a nice contrast to the very predictable finish that we got in the women's Rumble match with Charlotte Flair, going to WrestleMania, which was, had to be expected. I thought it was a nice contrast in that, if you had Charlotte Flair, if you knew Charlotte Flair was going to be winning the women's Rumble, for example, we did not need John Cena to win the men's Rumble in the same night and get two predictable finishes instead of just one. So it made for a nice contrast. There's been a lot of Jey Uso hate over these last, I'd say 14 or 15 hours. And I think a lot of it is really over the top. And I'm not talking about the people who just think that Jey Uso is not a main event level in-ring caliber performer. Because bell to bell in the ring, Jey Uso does not match up to the elite in-ring main event performers, right? I don't think that that's a radical opinion to have. And I've had, similar statements that I've made before. And if that's your opinion, then that's, I think, a perfectly valid opinion to have. But I'm seeing a lot of over the top hate. And I think at least some of it stems from people who were just very upset that their favorite didn't win. That John Cena didn't win, that CM Punk didn't win, that they didn't go with a quote unquote big name. Like I said before, John Cena did not need to win the Royal Rumble, especially if Charlotte was winning the Women's Rumble. And it appears that CM Punk is not going to be challenging for a title at WrestleMania. Now, that's not a lock, but it looks like he's headed possibly for a three-way with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. So if John Cena is the one going for gold in Las Vegas, he did not need to win the Royal Rumble to get there. And he did not. Because it came down to John Cena and Jey Uso. Which was smart because, again, unlike the Women's Rumble, one thing you can't say about the closing minutes of the men's match is that, oh, well, we all knew who was going to win. Oh, it was so predictable. No, actually, it wasn't. And there were a lot of people who were legitimately thrown for a loop and just could not imagine that Jey Uso was going to win the Royal Rumble, but there he was. You heard the reaction when he won. It wasn't a reaction of disappointment. It wasn't exasperation. People were genuinely happy, to see Jey Uso pick up the win. It's not very often that you really get a shock finish like that to a Rumble match, but it's like I said last week, it really shouldn't have been that much of a shock if you just pay attention to all the signs. They were all right there in front of your face. I still ultimately went with CM Punk as my prediction because I figured they're probably still going to go with him. At the end of the day, I didn't, know if they were going to pull the trigger on this or not. But why people were not including him in their conversations when they were talking about, well, who's your pick in your dark horse, or who are the top 3 likeliest winners of the Royal Rumble? And he just wasn't being mentioned by anybody. And he should have been. But, when the show was over, they were interviewing Jey Uso in the back. And, he has not officially announced which champion he is going to challenge. But he made it very clear he wants another crack at Gunther because he knows that he can beat him. And that's the story. That's the story that they are going to tell heading into WrestleMania 41. Every time he's been in the ring with this man, he has fallen short. He has lost. But he knows deep down in his heart that he can beat this man. And so it's an easy story to follow. It's a lot easier when you have someone as over as Jey is to get buy-in from the audience to where it doesn't feel forced. You do get the sense that people genuinely like this guy and they want to see him succeed. They want to see him do the impossible, right? He's the underdog, even though he's got the entire machine behind him. And he's part of the bloodline. And when you are part of this bloodline, clearly you are going to have a leg up on everybody else. I think that's a fair thing to say. WWE is very fond of the Samoan contingent that they have. And they get a lot of opportunities that, frankly, a lot of other people would not be getting because the bloodline has been so successful for them over the last 4 or 5 years. So he has that working in his favor. But Jey Uso over the last several years has gotten over organically. They put him in a position, again, a very attractive position, which was rubbing shoulders with Roman Reigns and being featured in a lot of top segments on the television show. But you still have to organically get over with the audience. And he did in a way that his brother hasn't, in a way that other members of the bloodline haven't, but he has. And I hear people with the criticisms about his in-ring ability and how limited he is, in the ring. The way I would look at it is this. There's a couple of different things. Number one, look at John Cena. And if you're somebody who is upset that John Cena did not walk out as the winner of the Royal Rumble, right? One thing that has become very clear to me in watching Cena, even going back to his match at WrestleMania with Austin Theory, which I'd rather forget. John Cena is washed. The John Cena that we see in the ring now, this is not the same John Cena of even a few years ago, right? He's not the same guy. But he's still John Cena. He's still one of the biggest stars in the history of this company. And he has a lot of fans. You heard the reaction when he came out last night at number 23. Even though John Cena may be washed, if the story works, you have to tell that story. And the story for John Cena is his quest for number 17. Does that mean that John Cena is the best person to be a world champion in this company right now? From an in-ring perspective? Fuck no. Of course not. But he's a 16-time champion. Nobody in the history of this company has held 17 world titles. He's in his retirement year. This is it. And he's got one last shot to make history. How do you not tell that story? So, of course, they're telling that story, right? In ring, he's not going to go in there and be able to give you the kind of matches that he used to. He's not going to be able to give you the kind of matches that Gunther would give you, or that some of the best in-ring performers in that company, a Seth Rollins or even a Punk at this point, somebody like that would be able to give you. But you have to tell that story, And I think at some point, yes, you have to put the belt on him. And he wins number 17. If the story works, you tell that story. This is a story for Jey Uso that WWE feels needs to be told because the fans are going to rally behind this guy and they're going to want to see him win that world championship. You know, people also say, well, Triple H plays it safe. He does. He did it Survivor Series. He did it Saturday Night's Main Event. Even Raw on Netflix, there were similar complaints. Well, you know, he didn't really do anything shocking or shake things up or anything like that. He plays it very safe. It's very predictable with Triple H's booking. Well, you can't say that about the men's Royal Rumble last night. And yet people are still very upset that they went with someone who was not who they thought it would be. But you can't have it both ways. By the way, I'm also old enough to remember a time where Vince McMahon would not always get behind somebody who the fans really liked if that person didn't fit his image of what he saw as a top guy, of what he saw as a world champion. And yeah, you'd have your Daniel Bryans, and every now and then somebody would squeak through. But he was very stubborn. He had his image, right, of who his champions would look like and how many people who could have been bigger than they were didn't get the chance. Well, now they're giving somebody a chance who normally you wouldn't expect to see in a spot like this. But they're giving somebody a chance who the fans genuinely like. Right? And that's the way it should be. The fans are the ones who are supposed to dictate that, not the promoter. Promoter is supposed to recognize all the signs and not be willfully blind and ignorant to them. The fans dictate with their wallets. They dictate with their chants and their signs and how many t-shirts they buy. All of these things make up what is supposed to go into, okay, we're going to go with this guy over that guy, right? You make your voices heard. You dictate who you want to see in these spots. Right now, the audience has dictated that they want to see Jey Uso get his shot. You know, look, I was surprised by how into those near falls people were on Saturday Night's Main Event last weekend when he wrestled Gunther. They really thought he had a chance. They really thought he might win that title. And they wanted him to. They were with it. They were into it. They wanted to see it. Now, you could look at WrestleMania last year, and Jey Uso had a horrible match with his brother. It's fucking terrible. And yes, Jey and Gunther, they've already had 3 matches before. It's not like it's a fresh match. It would not have been my first choice if I was putting together my WrestleMania card. This would not have been, at the top of my list. But I'm not angry about it. I see the vision. I see the story. I understand the rationale behind it. I'm happy for the guy. And I'm going to let them play this story out and see where it leads. There could be twists and turns. He could lose his shot. I don't see that happening. I think it's pretty much a done deal at this point. But we're only first kicking off this whole road to WrestleMania. So we'll see where it goes. Now, I had one person last night say that it also, in their view, helps elevate the World Heavyweight Championship because it really hasn't gotten the kind of attention that maybe it should. And it also makes the Elimination Chamber more important. And I think those are 2 very valid points. If you look at the 2 champions in this company right now, right, you may love Gunther and you may think he's a better wrestler than Cody Rhodes, but the reality is you cannot sit there with a straight face and tell me that Gunther has been positioned as the more important and the bigger of the 2 champions. He hasn't. And they told you that at Crown Jewel when they put them in the ring together and Cody Rhodes fucking beat him. That right there told you which championship they hold in higher regard. The World Heavyweight Championship has not really been featured all that prominently in the last several months. What this does is it at least guarantees, because of how over and how heavily they focus on Jey on the Raw brand, that it probably will get more attention than a lot of other matches that Gunther might be involved in would get. But yes, the Elimination Chamber is going to be very important this year. The Elimination Chamber, look, the reality is that championship, that WWE title, that's going to be the real main event of WrestleMania this year. Jey and Gunther, if it even closes the show, that's night one. But the bigger of the two main events will be Cody Rhodes defending against whoever his challenger is going to be. It was always going to be the bigger of the two matches. If you put Gunther in there with Logan Paul, if you put Gunther in there with Drew McIntyre, if you put Gunther in there with CM Punk, the WWE title match was always going to be the bigger of the two matches. This changes nothing. All those big names that got dumped out at the end of the Rumble last night, a lot of those guys are going to be in that Elimination Chamber in Toronto. And that includes John Cena. Because during the post-show after the Rumble last night, Cena came out and he didn't take any questions. He said he was going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to make a statement, and I'm not going to take a single question. And he kind of was getting a little emotional, and he was talking about how it really hit him last night, that this was it. This was his final Rumble. This is going to be his final WrestleMania. He was looking up at the sign last night, and he realized, this is it. This is my last voyage there. And he said that what's best for business, he's always been about what's best for business. He says he hasn't headlined a WrestleMania since 2013. Now he says what's best for business is for him to win title number 17. And he officially declared that he will be in the Elimination Chamber, and he is going after his 17th World Championship. And he said that he's not doing this for himself. He's doing this for the person whose hand he will eventually shake when they reach 18 titles. So John Cena is in the Elimination Chamber. John Cena did not need to win the Royal Rumble because he can win the Elimination Chamber. And I think he will win the Elimination Chamber. And I think what we're looking at is Cody Rhodes defending his title against John Cena at WrestleMania. And we could have a whole separate conversation about whether or not Cena should even win at WrestleMania, or do you really drag this chase out, which I like the idea better of dragging it out, making people really want it even more. You have a whole year to work with here, and he can win the title at SummerSlam. But I don't have an issue with him getting a title match at WrestleMania. If he loses, it just adds to the journey and to the story. And if he wins, then it's a huge moment. It's a huge history-making moment. But the Jey Uso stuff, just way, way over the top. And people need to calm their tits, is what they need to do. I see people saying, oh, he's just an entrance. People said the same thing about Joe Hendry. Oh, it's just a song. He's not that great in the ring. What's so special about Joe Hendry? What's so special about Joe Hendry is that the guy went viral on his own and got himself over. The song was the conduit to that, but he got himself over. Yeah, he's not the most dynamic in-ring performer, but the people love him. And that's why right now, he's the world heavyweight champion in TNA. Is he going to go out there and have 5-star matches? No. But the people like him. And the people wanted to see him succeed. They wanted to see him win the world title. You can call him an entrance if you want to, and that's fine. You can call Jey Uso an entrance, and that's fine. But this is a company getting behind a guy that the fans really like. They're trying to cement a new star. I cannot fault them for that, especially after years and years of them dropping the ball on so many other fucking people. And now they're in a position where they actually are listening to the fans. They see the numbers. They hear the fans. They see the reactions that he gets. And people are going to shit all over them for going with that guy just because why? He's not Roman Reigns. He's not CM Punk. Give me a fucking break.